Welcome back to Art and Impact, the podcast where we explore the stories behind the artists who changed history. I'm Carter, and today I'm joined by Phoenix and our two other guests, Zion and David. We're diving into the life and work of Hale Woodruff, an artist, activist, and educator who made a long-lasting impact on American art. Today's research question: how did Hale Woodruff contribute to the Harlem Renaissance with his understanding of post-impressionism in his artwork? And our thesis: Hale Woodruff contributed to the Harlem Renaissance by revolutionizing the African-American lifestyle and culture through his artwork.
Yeah, so Woodruff was a key figure in African-American art, especially during the Harlem Renaissance. His work captured themes of racial injustice, identity, and history, making him one of the most influential black artists of the 20th century.
And what's really cool about him is that he didn't just paint. He also shaped the future of black art by mentoring and teaching younger artists.
Absolutely. Today, we are going to focus on one of the most powerful works, which is Immunity on the Amistad, and discuss how he contributed to the Harlem Renaissance and beyond.
Alright, so let's start by breaking down Mutiny on the Amistad. This mural, created in 1939 for the Talladega College, tells the story of the Amistad Rebellion, where a group of enslaved Africans revolted against their captors. It's an incredibly powerful piece. What are your first impressions when you look at it?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is the intensity of the moment. So you can really feel the struggle and the determination in the way Woodruff paints the figures. So these captives aren't shown as helpless, they're really taking action and fighting back.
Right! And it's not just the movement, but also the composition itself. Woodruff uses diagonal lines and dramatic angles to create this chaos and urgency. It makes you feel like you're in the middle of the scene, witnessing history unfold.
Well, one of the things that I love about this piece of artwork is how Woodruff uses color to set the mood. The deep blues and the red create this sense of tension. Almost like you can hear the shouting. It's an emotional experience.
Exactly, and let's not forget the historical significance. The Amistad case was a huge moment in the fight against slavery, leading to a Supreme Court ruling that freed the captives. Woodruff wasn't just depicting the past, he was making a statement about resistance and justice that was still relevant in his own time.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So this mural was painted in 1939 when racial segregation was still the law in many parts of the US. So in a way, Woodruff was using history to comment on the present, showing that the fight for freedom wasn't over.
And he does this so effectively by making the figures look larger than life. The way he paints them, they're heroic, not just victims. It's a reminder that black people have always fought for their rights.
Yeah, and you can see the influence in artists like Diego Rivera in his work. And Woodruff actually studied the Mexican culture, and you can tell he took inspiration from their grand and sweeping compositions that tell story in a huge scale.
That's a great observation, and I think that's what makes Mutiny on the Amistad so powerful. It's both a history lesson and a call to action.
Now, Woodruff's legacy goes way beyond just one painting. He was a major part of the Harlem Renaissance, which was all about celebrating black culture through art, music, and literature.
Yeah, and the Harlem Renaissance was so important because it created a space where black artists could finally be recognized and respected. Before that, black art was often ignored and dismissed.
Yeah, Woodruff fit right into the movement because he was all about uplifting black voices. Even though he spent a lot of time in the South teaching, his work and ideas were deeply connected to what was happening in Harlem.
And something that's really interesting about him is that he wasn't just an artist, he was also a mentor and a teacher. When he studied in Paris in the 1920s, he was exposed to European modernism, and when he came back, he brought those techniques with him and shared them to young black men.
Yeah, and that's a big deal because at the time, there weren't many places where black artists could get formal training. Woodruff helped change that by teaching at Atlanta University and later at New York University.
And let's not forget that he didn't just paint. He was also involved in printmaking and even made public art pieces for the black community. He believed that art should be accessible to everyone and not something looked at only in museums.
Yeah, that's such a...
Oh no, the table's leaving.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The Harlem Renaissance wasn't just about making art for the sake of just making art. It was about using art to tell stories, and to fight against racism and inspire future generations, and Woodruff did all of that.
So, thinking about everything we talked about today, his art, his activism, and his role in education, what do you think his biggest impact was?
Well, for me, it's his ability to connect history with contemporary struggles. His paintings weren't just about the past. They were messages to future generations telling them to keep fighting for justice.
I'd say his biggest impact was as a mentor. He created opportunities for young black artists who otherwise might not have had a chance to develop their skills. He changed the landscape of black art education.
Yeah, I think his biggest contribution was proving that black stories would belong in the museum art world. He didn't wait for permission. He created murals, taught students, and pushed boundaries to make sure that those stories were able to be seen.
Hale Woodruff wasn't just an artist, he was a storyteller, an educator, and an activist. His work continues to inspire artists today, and his legacy lives on in the way we talk about black history and art.
Yeah, so Woodruff's work reminds us that art is powerful. It can challenge injustice, honor history, and inspire change.
And his influence goes beyond just his paintings. The artists he taught and the movements he's contributed to are still shaping the world today.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the Immunity on the Amistad or his other murals, definitely check them out. They're not just paintings, they're history lessons that still feel relevant.
Well, folks, that wraps up today's episode of Art and Impact. Thank you everyone for listening to our deep dive on Hale Woodruff's art and his legacy. If you enjoyed the podcast, please sure to subscribe and make sure that you tune in for more artists that we will go over. And thank you everyone today here for joining me on this podcast.
Thanks for listening!
Three, two, one.
One of the things that I love about this piece is how Woodruff uses color to set the mood. The deep blues of blues. And you can tell he took inspiration from that.
Y'all need to get it together, bro.
And he does it so effectively, you know? By making the figures look larger than life. The way he paints them, they're heroic. Not just victims. It's a reminder that black people have always fought.
No,
Dude,
David started looking away and he was like...
He really believed that art should be accessible to everyone and not just something looked at in museums.
I thought he was.
You're supposed to start!
I'm sorry.